Hey y'all, it's Allie with the Spiegel Mom Scraps design team, and this month we are working with watercolors and shaker pockets. So I start out just by doing a little bit of a watercolor background. I'm using watercolor paper for this, and I'm just going through with some blobs of pink and blue and to match the sequin mix that I'm going to be using. So once this is all dry, I've actually used my Cameo to cut out circles, and then I'm taking my white ink and just kind of smudging circles. It gives this really cool effect and kind of mutes the harshness of the lines in the watercolors and gives it a really fun effect. So once I'm finished with this, I'm going to start kind of planning out my layout, and I start with some torn pieces taped with some washi tape down the middle, and I end up not loving where it's headed. So I feel like I really want that watercolor paper that I made to kind of stand on its own rather than be a layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and split open the sides of my layout and tuck in this watercolor paper that I created. This is a super fun and easy way to add watercolors to your project without watercoloring on your background if that scares you. I know when I first started with mixed media, it really scared me that I was going to completely ruin my background. So you can add watercolors without adding it to your background paper, which I am going to do as well. But here I'm just trying to kind of figure out my layers and where I want my photo and everything under it. And I fuss with this for a really long time, longer than necessary. So once I get that all situated, then I can start my mixed media on the actual background. But I've just pulled some scraps from different collections that I thought matched the color scheme well, and I'm just going to go through and kind of put my layers down. I actually had used that blue stripe paper. I'd cut stars out of it previously. I just created that. I just made that into a tag. So super easy way to use up your leftovers and really utilize all of your scraps that you have. So I'm going to keep layering this. And I've torn off pieces of the watercolor paper. I want to incorporate that into my layers as well. So this is actually the second time that I'm scrapping this photo. It's a picture of my daughter about an hour after surgery. She had hip dysplasia, and so she was put into a full body cast after a hip surgery, and she was about 6 months old at the time. So I scrapped it relatively soon after the event, but now it's been about 3 years and I have a little bit different of a story to tell, and I'm not opposed to scrapping the same picture to tell a story later on with maybe a different perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and staple down the edges that I've torn up and folded over. It works a little better than just gluing them or taping them down, and I really want them to stay. Then I'm going to use some washi tape to tape my layers together so that they don't come apart and I don't have to redo them or glue them completely to my background right now because I'm going to add some more mixed media. So once I get them exactly where I want them, I just add a tiny bit of washi tape, trying to reach all the layers so that they stay completely together. And so you can see I left one behind, but that's no big deal. I'm able to keep that together. My photo fits over it nicely. And then when I'm ready, I can put it on my page. So I've already added some gesso to this paper, and now I'm going to put some white acrylic paint on there, which I actually got a little too much, so I'm going to save that aside. And I'm just going to spread it out kind of in the shape that I want it to be. And I do this really quickly with just a dry brush spread out all of my white paint and let that dry completely before I add anything else to it. When I first started doing mixed media, I didn't have all of the tools that I needed. I didn't have all the supplies that I needed, and I would try to work without gesso or without priming my paper first, and it just always ended up really horribly. So if you want to do mixed media, I really suggest gesso. First and foremost, that's going to be the key. I'm actually using fairly cheap cardstock here, and the gesso really helps that. So now I'm going to go through with the stencil that I used earlier on my watercolor paper, and I'm just going to create some circles on this paint background that I've made. And I'm going to make them kind of look messy. Not trying to do perfect circles here. I like the sketched look. And then in each circle, I've used some gel medium. I've just painted it on and let it dry just in the circle. And I'll show you guys later, but watercolors don't really take to gel medium very well, so you can do whatever you want on that and then kind of remove the watercolor. So what I'm going to do is splatter all over my white paint, including on top of these circles. And I'm going to use the same watercolors that I used on the background that I created, the pinks and blues. And I'm just going to splatter all over this. And then later I can take a dauber with some alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and just rub in the middle of those circles, and all of that watercolor paint and that gel medium comes right up. So they're perfectly white again. And then I go through, once the gel medium has been removed, I can paint in each one of those circles. So I'm going to use the same watercolors that I used for the splatter, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint each one of those circles. This is the first time that I've really taken this much effort in mixed media on one of my layouts. I do some art journaling here and there just to play around, but it was really fun to incorporate this into a layout. And I really love the end result. I love how it turned out. I used a black pen around the circles, and it's not a permanent ink, so it will spread. And I don't mind this. I kind of like that messy look. It doesn't bother me. But if you're using watercolors and a pen, just remember that certain inks are going to spread. And if you don't want that to happen, use something that's more permanent. So the sequin mix that I'm using with this today is called Make My Heart Sing, and it's got all of these lovely pinks and blues, and honestly, it was kind of my starting point for this layout, and the name of the sequin mix actually inspired me because this photo that I am scrapping does make my heart sing, and a lot of concerns about my daughter going through this surgery and seeing the smile on her face so soon after surgery really did make my heart sing. So I almost titled the layout Make My Heart Sing, but I went with post-surgery smiles, and then I journaled about how her smile does make my heart sing. So once that's completely dry, I can start putting my picture on and adding in my title and my journaling. So because I have my layers already figured out, it's super easy to just go in, place them where I want them, and then use my stapler to staple them to the background. And I love doing that. It's so much easier. Honestly, like, as a scrapbooker, I shouldn't hate adhesive as much as I do, but I really hate adhesive. So if I can staple something on, I'm much more likely to do that. It's a lot less messy for me. The stapler is also perfect for twine. Typically, I'd be using my tiny attacher, but I'm actually out of tiny attacher staples, so I'm just using regular staples. They're actually like this bright blue color and kind of went with my color scheme here, so anything really works. So I'm just going to add some dimensional tape to my photo just so it kind of pops off the page a little bit more. And then I'm going to put it right on top of those layers. So after that, I'm going to start working on my title, and I wanted to go with a stitched element. So I have cut out with my Cameo the word smiles, and I tape that down with some washi tape and then pierce around it. And then I can go ahead and pull up my cut file right there and just do the stitching. And that way I can still see all of my mixed media, and I've got some little tiny letters that spell post-surgery. And I'm going to go ahead and add those on so that if the stitching kind of goes above those stickers, then no worries, I can stitch over it. I love using these tiny alphas, and especially if you put them on a piece of plastic or a page protector or something ahead of time, if you overlap them just slightly, you can oftentimes pull up the entire word in one fell swoop. So you don't have to place each individual letter on the plastic and then also on your layout. So that makes it nice. It's quicker and easier, and I'm all about that. Which I suppose is kind of an ironic statement, as I'm also going to stitch around an entire title here. But really, I just love the way that stitching adds an element of texture and depth, and it's a fun way to create a title. So after I get this all pierced around and in all of the little holes of the S's and whatnot, I'm going to go ahead and take my pink embroidery floss and stitch it. So the second element that we're working with is shaker pockets. And I wanted to do something fun and different and make a shaker pocket frame. So I'm using permanent marker on a page protector. If you do this, I recommend going ahead and doing the permanent marker on the opposite side that you're using your fuse tool. It makes removing the permanent marker a lot easier if it doesn't end up in all of those tiny little grooves from your fuse tool. So I've measured this out and I've created my frame, and I'm going to go ahead and just fuse all of the black lines. So I fused the inside so that I'm not wasting a bunch of sequins, because I am going to use this as a layering tool. So I don't want the sequins in the middle. That's going to be behind my photo. And in fact, I end up changing this entirely and kind of fusing the edges together and then making it like half a frame. You'll see in the finished layout. But I don't completely use it as a frame. I use it kind of as a layering tool. So I don't want all of the sequins in the middle. That's just a waste. Nobody would see those beautiful sequins. So once I go around 3 edges, that's when I just start shoving in all of my sequins and really pushing them down in all of the edges and filling it as much as I want it filled. So once that's complete, then I can go through and just do the last edge that I haven't finished. And once you're done with that, you can use rubbing alcohol again and rub off all of your black lines. You can also use a cut file as a template, or, there's lots of different ways to go about doing this. So once I cut it all out and then get all my black lines removed, I can use it on my layout. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this process video. And as always, if you're going to shop in the Spiegel Mom Scrap Store, don't forget to use my code AllieG15 to save 15% off your entire order. Have a great day.